miss your old familiar friends, but waiting just around the bend. Everywhere you look, there's a heart, there's a heart.
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, some of you may have heard already that in the case of Amir Khan's upcoming fight with Nareej Goyat, it appears that Nareej was involved in a car accident. He's suffered some serious injuries, some severe injuries, and obviously, he's not going to be able to participate in that card with Amir Khan. So in his place, Billy Dibb is going to be stepping in. Billy Dibb, who fought Tevin Farmer for what was the vacant IBF title. Guy who fought, his last professional fight was at 135 pounds. He had since then retired for a short time thereafter, only to subsequently unretire, and he was actually going to be participating on the undercard to this promotion, but given the circumstances, he's going to be stepping in for Nareej Goyat. And I'm sure that Amir Khan is counting his lucky stars and counting his blessings that this payday, what is going to be a very significant payday, I'm sure he's feeling lucky that, the card's been salvaged, or at least that his portion of it has, that he's got a dance partner, he's going to get to fight, he's going to get paid, and he's going to be squaring off against Billy Dibb. I will say, and make of this what you will, feel free to disagree, but the card was already a bit of an anomalous kind of card that, Amir Khan stands to make a lot of money for this fight. God bless him. Nobody's knocking him for what is an easy payday. But you look at the card and you wonder, they're paying this guy a substantial amount of money for what really wasn't a big fight. That Nareej Goyat fight, that wasn't a big fight. We all know that. But Amir Khan, better still, lending his name to this promotion, stands to make a lot of money. So we see what happened. Now it's Billy Dibb. And Billy Dibb, standing in for Nareej Goyat, it doesn't make this any more of an intriguing, eye-catching, attention-grabbing card than it was before. It's a misnomer, in a manner of speaking, that I'm not quite sure why, the backers of this event are paying Amir Khan so much money to participate in it. It's certainly not a significant fight to the sport of boxing. It's not for a full-fledged world title. It's not a full title. There's not a full title of any kind in association with this promotion. The only title associated with this promotion is a commemorative item, a novelty belt, cooked up by the WBC that they're calling the Pearl Belt. But all those particulars aside, this is not a relevant card to the sport of boxing. So Billy Dibb standing in for Nareej, it doesn't make this any more of a intriguing situation. Better still, it does beg the question why so much time, so much money, and so much effort is going into this promotion. There are some things about this thing we really don't know. I'm not trying to say there's something sketchy going on so much as on this side of the world, it's not quite clear why exactly is so much time, so much effort, so much money being poured into this promotion when it's not a relevant fight to the sport of boxing. I don't get it, but it is what it is. And what resonates with me the most in regards to this story is that in a lot of ways what it communicates is that Amir Khan is more or less a semi-retired fighter. I mean, you see what he stands to make for this card, right? For participating in this promotion. And you then look over at the kinds of opponents that he would have faced. It went from Nareej Goyat to Billy Dibb. And with respect to those guys, those really aren't the kind of guys that anyone would characterize as risky opponents for Amir Khan, even now. In other words, if you can make this kind of money fighting these kinds of opponents, then why would you take any risks thereafter? I'm not telling you that Amir Khan never took risks. We all know that he did. I mean, even the Terrence Crawford fight was a risky fight, in a manner of speaking. The Canelo fight, this is a guy who's been in there against risky opponents. But what we're discussing and what we're describing is the current state of affairs. Where is Amir Khan now? And given what he stands to make for this fight, for this card, for fighting against Billy Dibb, who, his last fight, what wasn't it at 135 pounds against Tevin Farmer? Given what he stands to make for this card, the fact that there aren't that many risks involved in this thing, you think about that and you wonder, what, Amir Khan's going to go on from this into a risky fight, given what he just made for not taking a risk? I guess what I'm getting at is that in many ways, we can look at Amir Khan as a semi-retired fighter, that he's not quite retired yet, but he's getting there. And that's what this fight is, and that's what this payday is. The retirement fund. Because I can't see Amir Khan deciding to go from this into some risky situation for what likely would be a comparable payday to the one he's about to get for not taking a risk. You know, I look at him as a semi-retired fighter, and that's what resonates with me the most in regards to this promotion.
As I see Spence versus Porter.
Right.
Spence versus Porter will answer any questions you got about Spence, because I haven't seen Spence in a big fight yet. Spence looks wonderful to me. I'm not gonna lie, he looks good. Right. And I heard about his sparring session with Mayweather and all that, and that's all sounds good, but under the lights is different. You understand me? So I need to see you work under the lights against a guy like a Sean Porter. Now I can evaluate how you look under the lights and say what I think about if you fight Terrence Crawford. Right now, I know what Terrence Crawford is. I don't know what Spence is. You understand me? Not a knock on either one of them. But Crawford been around long. Crawford have been in the ring with the Gamboas of the world, the Ray Beltrans of the world. Blast him. So I know what he does with top-notch competition. But I ain't seen Spence with it. Mikey Garcia is top-notch, but he's 2 weight classes lighter. So I can't judge you off of Mikey Garcia. I got to see you against another welterweight. Sean Porter, I can make some judgments on.
Right, what's your call on that?
Once again, this is not a knock on nobody.
No, not
It's just that I have not seen him yet. Okay? When I see him against a good top-notch fighter, now I can make my judgment better, because now I know what he is, what he does under the lights. You understand? Now I can make my...
You know that these recent comments from Roy Jones Jr., they've sparked a lot of conversations. They've even warranted a response from Errol Spence himself, who, as you can imagine, didn't take too kindly to what Roy had to say.
He said, yeah, that's what he said.
I mean,
that's what he said.
At the end of the day, he still, he was an HBO dude, so, and he's rocking Terrence Crawford real heavy.
He said you gotta fight Porter, and then he'll be able to assess you better.
That's cool. I mean, I never look for his approval anyway, so it really don't matter what he talking about. I'm gonna be Porter, then be Keith and Pacquiao, then I'm gonna watch his boy too, Bud. So I really don't care what he.
What did you think?
But in order for you to approach this subject the right way, you've got to put all the Terrence Crawford stuff aside. The whole this side of the street, that side of the street, who's responsible for this and who's responsible for that. You've got to put the polarization that created to the side and just look at Errol Spence as the fighter himself objectively and cross-compare that with what Roy Jones Jr. is alleging. He's saying that he doesn't really know what kind of fighter Spence is. He's saying that,
he's been looking good, bud.
The Mikey Garcia fight, for example, is no measure of how good or how bad Errol Spence is, because Mikey Garcia came up 2 weight classes for that fight. And I've expressed a very similar sentiment to that here on the relay. That, you dominating a guy who jumps up 2 weight classes to fight you, that's really no barometer for who you are in your own weight class. Because the guy that you're beating up on, the guy that you're outclassing in many ways, the guy that you're pouncing on, he's never done anything at your weight. No matter how good he was in his prescribed weight class, he's proven nothing in yours. So you beating him there doesn't stand for much. Ergo, he didn't prove anything as a welterweight. He'd never fought there before, and if he never proved anything there, then what does you beating him there prove?
Nothing.
Not a lot. There were a lot of people that were elated
afterwards
at that particular fight. Now, I'm wondering, were these same people elated when Canelo Alvarez knocked out Amir Khan? Amir Khan, who jumped up 2 weight classes for that fight? We all knew that Amir Khan was a fish out of water in that fight.
He didn't belong there.
You think about Gennady Golovkin versus Kell Brook. Kell Brook, who actually fought Errol Spence immediately after that. You think about that and how, Kell Brook, he couldn't make it to the midway point against Gennady Golovkin. Why? Because he was a fish out of water, how Mikey Garcia was a fish out of water. Gennady Golovkin didn't prove anything in beating up on a guy who never did anything at his weight. And that same logic applies to Errol Spence beating up on Mikey Garcia. Mikey Garcia's never done anything as a welterweight, so why would beating him there prove something? It wouldn't. Yet there were a lot of fans out there who were, they were really high on it. They claimed they liked what they saw, and the buzz didn't quite match the performance, at least to some people, at least to Roy Jones Jr. in this scenario, who, you can criticize what I say, you can question my views and my objectives, because I don't have the wealth of experience or something or other that a pro fighter might have. You can question me, you can question yourself, and you can question others. But can you really question Roy Jones Jr. in that respect when it's coming from him, when he's saying something very similar to what a lot of people are saying, that a fight like that doesn't prove anything? Is that unfair? Is that, biased? Is that partial? Do you think that Roy Jones Jr. made these comments because he's got some kind of bias against Errol Spence, that he's got some kind of agenda, that he's regularly trying to berate him? Is that where you think these comments are coming from? Or is Roy Jones Jr. touching on something that's very real? That, look, Errol Spence is a good, exciting fighter. He's shown that he's a solid guy, but the buzz that he's got doesn't quite match what he has put forth. And it's for this reason that this Sean Porter fight is an important fight. It is a pay-per-view worthy fight. That if you have been a bit critical of the kinds of decisions that Errol Spence has been making, of his sound bites, if these are things that you've been critical of in the past, well, in this scenario, this is one fight where you don't need to be critical. I mean, after that Kell Brook fight, we look at the situation. We look at the Kell Brook fight. We've talked about that fight many times. That, look, while Kell Brook might have been a solid test for Errol Spence, and he was a solid test. It was a competitive fight. But at the end of the day, that was a fighter that was coming off a crushing defeat, off a 5-round beating in a weight class where he clearly didn't belong. And these are the facts. And that after that fight, he had to have surgery to his face, that he had to go all the way from, being at 160 to going all the way back down to 147, a weight that he was already struggling to make, okay? These are just the facts. So you look at that and you think to yourself, well, this was the most formidable opponent that Errol Spence has faced so far. What has he done since that time, and who has he faced that would have posed equal to or greater than resistance than Kell Brook did? It couldn't have been Carlos Ocampo.
No fucking way.
And bear in mind, I didn't criticize Spence for that fight. I myself said, that's his IBF mandatory. He doesn't have a choice. If he doesn't fight that guy, they're going to take his belt. So good fighter, bad fighter, whatever kind of fighter, Errol's got to deal with that guy. And he did. He made short work of him. But the question then becomes, did Carlos Ocampo pose the same resistance as a Kell Brook? No, obviously not. Is Carlos Ocampo some highly rated, highly touted, highly proven fighter in the welterweight division? No. That guy never fought out of Mexico. Outside of Mexico, that guy never had a fight. He wasn't a world level guy. It is what it is. You think about who Spence fought thereafter. Lamont Peterson. Lamont Peterson, a fighter who's been through wars. Lamont Peterson who, in the welterweight division, really hadn't proven much aside from beating Avanesian. That's about it.
That's it.
Yeah, this guy, he was a decent fighter, some time ago, but that wasn't at this weight. He hasn't been at this weight very long. Those are just the facts. So you beating that guy, once again, it doesn't pose the same as or greater than resistance than what you faced in Kell Brook. So to date, that still was your toughest opponent. We then look at Mikey Garcia. Same principle. Mikey proved nothing at the weight. He did not pose the same as or greater than resistance than Kell Brook did. You think about these things, what Errol Spence and who he's been fighting since facing Kell Brook, and it very much does seem like, there's some more questions that need to be answered. And the beauty part of it all is whether you're a Spence fan or you're a Spence critic, this Sean Porter fight that's coming up, it gives you that to look forward to, because more questions will get answered. Sean Porter might have lost to Kell Brook many years ago. I don't dismiss that, but what you guys have got to realize is that Sean Porter is not coming off a loss the way that Kell Brook was before he fought Errol Spence. Sean Porter is coming off of consecutive victories. Sean Porter is a reigning champion coming off of consecutive victories. Sean Porter's a fight who has shown improvement. He's not just rushing in there these days, smothering his own work and the other guys. So this test is the next test to answer more questions about Errol Spence. And if he emerges victorious, then you can give him that credit, because then you can say he's done more than just beat up on a guy that didn't belong in his weight class, or fight a champion that was coming off a loss. Then you can say, okay, now you're cooking with rice. After that Mikey Garcia fight, a lot of people, including myself, had a lot of things to say. I was actually a bit surprised that Errol Spence couldn't so much as make that guy take a knee, because let's face the facts, Mikey Garcia is a world-class fighter. He's a proven fighter, just not at 147. So you got a fish out of water, a guy who's done absolutely nothing at the weight, against what's supposed to be the boogeyman of the division, one of the more devastating and concussive punchers at the weight, and the little guy actually goes the distance. You understand? That creates an environment to where now you've got more questions that, hold on a second here. If Errol Spence is the genuine article, and he is what everyone's making him out to be, then how is it that a fighter as small as Mikey Garcia, who hasn't done anything at the weight, how is it that he can go the distance with what's supposed to be the boogeyman? You think about that, and then you think about the Sean Porter fight and what he brings to the table. It just so happens that Sean Porter, in case you guys forgot, is known for his punch resistance, that this is a guy that he can take a hard shot but keep up the pace and keep on coming, that he will keep coming after you. This is a characteristic that Sean Porter was, and in some ways still is, known for. Think about that Spence's power is in question, and that a fighter like Sean Porter can test that power while posing some resistance. Sean Porter is widely regarded as one of the more physical fighters in the welterweight division. A guy who, even if you manage to beat him, it's just not going to be easy. Nobody's had an easy night's work against Sean Porter. Even guys that managed to score victories over him. Guys like Kell Brook, guys like Keith Thurman. You know, this guy, he will test you. And I think that's what Roy was trying to communicate, that, you know what, Errol Spence has been looking good, but a good amount of these fights that he's been looking good in are the kind of fights where he's supposed to look good. He hasn't had very many of those big moments yet. And this unification fight, this is just such a moment. A time where, you know, you really can't say much about his opponent. You can't disparage him. He is a reigning champion. He is a fighter that's coming off consecutive victories. He's proven at the weight. He's had some ups and 1 or 2 downs. But better still, whether they were ups or whether they were downs, Sean Porter is the kind of fighter that is going to test what you're made of. And for Errol Spence, there are certain tests that, you know what, we still need answers. So I don't think there's anything wrong with what Roy Jones Jr. said. I mean, I think that there are those select fanboys out there, you know, Spence's fans, that they may have been offended by what Roy said. But if you really think about what Roy's saying, he's just expressing enthusiasm in regards to this fight. So, you know, myself, the most I can say is I can completely agree with what Roy Jones Jr. is saying, and that only adds to the intrigue of what is this upcoming unification fight.
I'll say that if Errol Spence didn't have as many question marks as he still does hanging over his head in regards to whether or not he's the genuine article, you know, what about his punching power? He was billed as this concussive puncher, but he couldn't put down a guy whose last fight was at 135. If those question marks weren't there ahead of this Sean Porter fight, then the fight itself wouldn't be as intriguing. But because those question marks are there, it is intriguing. You wonder, if Spence can't knock Porter out, can Porter manage to make the fight more competitive? These elements, these components, they make the fight more exciting. They make it more intriguing that there are still questions that need answers. So even in regards to Errol Spence's critics, those criticisms still lend themselves to this fight's appeal. That if everybody were sold on him already, if everybody were convinced already, and the fight and the outcome, its outcome seemed like a foregone conclusion, you wouldn't have anything to be excited about. But this fight, unlike some other of Spence's fights, there's actually an element of intrigue. And I think that's what this fight needs, so that it can be sold, and so that Errol Spence can move on from it, thereby having convinced more people.